6:30 a.m. August 10th, 2019. Inside one of the most high-security prison units in New York, the man connected to some of the world's most disturbing allegations was found lifeless in his cell. The official report said one word: suicide. But that morning, multiple safeguards failed. The surveillance cameras were not functioning. The guards assigned to his unit did not complete their checks. Was it a tragic coincidence, or the quiet collapse of a system that had already failed long before that night? Jeffrey Epstein. To the public, he was a wealthy financier. To powerful circles, he was a well-connected social figure with access to the highest levels of influence. But behind the carefully curated image of privilege and intellect existed a far darker reality, one described by victims, investigators, and court records as a coordinated system of exploitation and control. This is not just a crime story. It is a story about how influence shields wrongdoing and how justice bends when power is involved. The names connected to Epstein's world were extraordinary. Political leaders, members of royalty, financial elites, prominent figures from science and culture. They appeared in flight logs, in contact books, in testimony. They traveled aboard his private jet, later nicknamed the Lolita Express. They visited his private properties, including the island known as Little St. James. What happened behind those closed doors has been described through sworn statements, survivor testimony, and sealed court documents. The central question remains unanswered. Were these individuals simply guests, or were they part of a system built on silence and leverage? For years, critical records were sealed, identities were redacted, victims were discredited, ignored, or legally restrained from speaking publicly. But over time, the barriers began to crack. This investigation is no longer based on speculation. It is rooted in court filings, depositions, and documented evidence. To understand how this system formed, we must rewind. How does a college dropout with no formal background in finance become the trusted financial advisor to billionaires? In the late 1970s, Epstein was working as a math teacher at the Dalton School in Manhattan. He had no visible wealth, no established reputation, no known access to elite financial networks. Yet within a few years, he was managing vast sums of money and traveling by private jet. The turning point was his relationship with retail magnate Leslie Wexner, founder of L Brands. Wexner granted Epstein an extraordinary level of authority, including power of attorney, an arrangement almost unheard of among ultra-wealthy individuals. This marked the beginning of what some investigators later described as the Epstein method. He did not simply manage finances, he cultivated access. He built trust through discretion, and he positioned himself as a gatekeeper between wealth, influence, and secrecy. Epstein began acquiring properties that resembled secured compounds: a sprawling Manhattan townhouse, a private ranch in New Mexico, and most notably, a secluded island in the U.S. Virgin Islands. As his influence grew, so did the reports. Multiple witnesses later stated that his residences were equipped with extensive surveillance systems, hidden cameras, restricted access areas, constant monitoring. His social circle expanded to include heads of state, Nobel Prize-winning academics, and high-ranking officials. According to testimony, Epstein was not merely hosting gatherings, he was accumulating leverage. Little St. James appeared from a distance to be a private tropical retreat, but survivor accounts describe something very different. A controlled environment, strict rules, young women and minors transported between locations, isolation from outside communication. At the center of the island stood a distinctive temple-like structure. Its exact purpose has never been fully explained. The island, combined with Epstein's private aircraft, formed what investigators later described as the core infrastructure of his operation. The jet logs alone became a critical piece of evidence, not proof of crimes, but proof of proximity. In 2008, authorities had an opportunity to dismantle the operation entirely. Federal investigators assembled extensive evidence. Multiple victims were prepared to testify. The allegations described a coordinated trafficking network. And yet Epstein received a non-prosecution agreement. Instead of federal charges, he served 13 months in a county facility under a work release arrangement that allowed him to leave jail for most of the day. The deal extended protections not only to Epstein, but to unnamed associates. To this day, that agreement remains one of the most controversial legal decisions in modern American history. Questions followed. Who approved it? Who benefited from it? And who avoided scrutiny as a result? For more than a decade, Epstein continued to move freely among elite circles. That silence ended in July 2019, when he was arrested once again, this time on federal charges. But a trial never came. August 10th, 2019, transformed the case into something even larger. Epstein's death closed one chapter, but exposed many others. In the years since, courts have gradually released previously sealed materials. And just days ago, a massive new disclosure shook the case once more. According to court-linked releases and reporting, millions of pages of documents, some sources citing figures in the millions, were made public. These materials include sworn testimonies, communications, and records tied to Epstein's network. They reference patterns of recruitment, transportation of minors, abuse on private properties, and the systematic silencing of victims. The documents do not deliver simple answers, but they confirm one thing with certainty. This was not the operation of a single individual. It was a system sustained by access, fear, and influence. Jeffrey Epstein is dead, but the questions he left behind are very much alive. As more documents surface and more voices are finally heard, the story continues to evolve. This is no longer just about what happened. It is about how long it was allowed to happen, and who had the power to stop it. Because in a world where secrets become currency, the truth always comes with a cost, and eventually the bill comes due.